Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host, Mark Ronich of statewide news service, jbiztechvalley.com. As you can see here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, and I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and including the show here. And I have a column in the Jewish Press called Albany Beat, where I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But one of the one of our good friends to the Jewish community is with us today, Congressman Paul Tonko.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Rabbi.
Well,
how are you?
Everything's
So
good.
good to see you again. Thank
It's
you for
good to
coming
be with
back,
you.
a return guest.
Yeah?
So, how have you been?
I've been busy, and I've been pushing very hard for items that I think will serve certainly this community and the state and the nation well.
So, you were just involved in the sit-in.
Right.
Now you're sitting on our set.
All right, you're
There
sitting
you go.
in here too.
Are you
All right.
tired of sitting?
No, there's been a lot of walking in between, but
So
yeah,
did
the
you
sit-in
accomplish anything?
Well, we raised the consciousness and the awareness. I think what you have out there, Mark, is this huge factor of dysfunction that has been labeled by many of the polling organizations. But people got to see what that dysfunction is about, that there's a group looking to move progressive, common sense ideas forward, and a recalcitrance from others. And so that gives more definition to the delay for progress. And I think it's good for people to understand just what is happening and is not happening based on various elements within the House.
Now, while you were in the Assembly for over 2 decades, I believe?
25 years.
Yeah,
Wow,
only a
that's
quarter
long.
of a century you were in the State Assembly.
Did you have to put it in
Yeah, I
those
had to
terms?
put it in those terms.
Okay.
Now, if you ever saw the opposition party have a sit-in, I mean, most that they do is they may have a lot of speechifying, but they constrain.
Right.
I mean, and you were in the majority in the Assembly. What would you say to them? You'd say, well,
Well, I think it would
you know.
speak to an order of frustration, not by legislators per se, but on behalf of constituents. Think of the Newtown parents as a group
Okay,
that's been impacted.
Well, what were you sitting in for? What was the issue you
Okay,
were sitting?
there were 2 bills that we see as common sense bills that speak to gun violence prevention.
Okay.
And, we've had a number of mass murders. Orlando of late. Columbine, certainly Newtown. The Virginia campus, college campus.
Ohio. SUNY Albany.
Columbine.
SUNY Albany had a not
Right.
coming
So,
to a bunch of sense.
it keeps, all these impacts come and then they go. There were moments of silence, rightfully, prayerful moments to honor, memorialize the victims, to show respect to the families. But, we keep asking for progress here. Gathering each and every time there's a catastrophe is indeed appropriate, but the families rightfully want to see some sort of reforms that will deny, at least reduce greatly, the impact that gun violence has in our society. And when the Newtown parents come to town, and they're there routinely.
In Washington.
Yes,
Yeah.
asking for common sense legislation. They put their young children, these very young children, single digit in age, on a bus to go to school. They have every rightful expectation that they will be, coming
Safe,
back home,
yeah, safe.
and that they will be safe. And for them to have endured this sort of loss, tragically, needlessly, there needs to be a response. And so the 2 measures that we're asking to bring to the floor for a vote, just identify yourself with these issues. I'm not saying they will necessarily pass, but constituents across the country need to know what 435 people as representatives are. And, there's a no-buy, no-fly measure.
Yeah.
If you're deemed too dangerous to board a plane because you're on a terrorist list, why can you legally purchase a gun? Legally purchase a gun.
'Cause they
People,
don't check.
understand. People understand. Gun owners and non-gun owners Understand
What was
that's a
their
common sense thing.
opposition, though? Like you say, it seems so obvious, if a
There
person's...
isn't any. That's why we want to hear the rationale on the floor. Let's debate this. Let's vote on it.
But this is what happens in New York State's legislature all the time, because the Speaker of the Assembly won't even let bills out.
Well, I think
And he won't even let them come to the floor if it's not something that the conference agrees with. And that's now even under Shelley Silver, that was one thing, but now Carl Hastie says, as Speaker of the Assembly, you got to have 76 Democrats, not just 76 members.
Well, look, we're talking about the House, not the Assembly, and I understand.
It's still the people's house.
I understand it's the people's house, but we're also talking about an issue that is impacting lives directly, the loss of life directly. And again, these are issues that the public has said they want an airing on. The other measure that closes loopholes on background checks. If I purchase a gun in a shop,
Yeah,
I have to have a background check.
okay.
If I go online, there's no backup check requirement. If I purchase at a show, no back.
I thought they did that in New York State, where they have to have a background check.
We're talking about standard treatment across the country.
Right, but in
And
New York State, we're ahead of the game on that, right?
we are, but the carry of arms over borders is something that needs to be addressed. So there
Okay.
should be standard legislation, federally speaking, that will make our world safer. And after witnessing over 100 lives being impacted, changed forever, if not lost, too early in life, it's a tragedy that needs to have a response, and that shows respect to the loved ones who are tortured by this treatment. That date, I believe it was June 12th of the Orlando
Massacre.
situation, the massacre. There were 42 other incidents. 4 people in a family in Albuquerque, a young man in Baltimore.
That didn't get
and the
really
list goes
more
on.
than local coverage.
Right. But it tells you what carnage there is out there in any given day.
Why do you
Well,
think
it
that is?
really-
And when we were kids, and nothing like this ever happened. I mean, I don't
There's
know,
a-
I'm trying to put a finger on it, you know what I'm saying?
It wasn't reported the
People
way it is
didn't
today.
have 40 people killed when we were,
Right. I
I
think,
never heard of such a thing.
there's become, I think, almost a cultural thing, where there's, we witness in this presidential election year, there's a lot of reach to fear and anger and hatred and division, and it's a societal impact that is causing people to respond in a very aggressive manner. Just the other night in the news, when they showed the Capitol in California, at San Jose, and conflict came.
Sacramento
Yeah.
and San Jose.
Oh, excuse me, not San Jose, Sacramento. I'm sorry.
Sacramento.
And again, even the newscasters forewarned that it might be a little upsetting to view the film that they had, but outbursts with again extreme thinking and very assertive.
You're right, it comes
quality.
to the presidential election, I see that. There's always obviously going to be conflict, and that's our society between Democrats and Republicans. That's our society, let them debate, but civilly, that's...
Exactly, the
but now
civility
there's
is lost.
Yeah, I know.
There are members in any legislature, not just the House, where they don't want to be on record voting, for or against a certain bill. So that there's so charged measures that they, especially in an election year as this is, that they really don't want to have their yay or nay recorded. Maybe an off-year election, like next year, might work better for them. I mean,
Well, let me
legislature
answer that with a
happens.
question. Do you think that the public has a right to know where they're coming from, what they're thinking?
That's up to them to ask them when they come back to their districts. Yes.
I think they have a right to know,
But
and
they
all
should-
we're saying is, just bring it to the floor for a vote. It's been stalled for far too long, and every time you have to face these families and loved ones, it's embarrassing, it's hurtful,
Oh, I
And so out of
understand.
respect here, we should bring this to the floor.
Okay. So let me ask you about opioid abuse.
Yeah.
Because that could be tied in with gun violence,
Yeah, right.
But
And
it is
you have a
violent
bill
over
that
Yes,
you're...
epidemic proportions of You know, when we're 4.7% of the world population, and we're consuming in excess of 80% of the world's illicit drugs,
Really that much? I didn't know.
it's
the
very
figure.
destructive. And, you know, I think we've all witnessed it in our neighborhoods, our communities, perhaps in
Yeah,
our
for sure.
families. But there is, again, this impact that has come over the last decade or more, where you just reach to pain-free outcomes. And, you know, people were given opiates for sports injuries as young children, surgery as middle-aged and senior people. And we then become a little more alerted to the fact that this can be damaging because of the long-term consequences. People are given a random number of tablets, 30. What happens to those tablets you don't use? Are they getting into the wrong hands? Are they being flushed into our environment? So there are a lot of concerns here. And, you know, and I was just going to state that while that culture developed to administer, distribute, dispense these opiate-type medications, we began to understand that it was very painful. People were hooked.
We had a 3-bill package in the New York State legislature that got passed. And one of them was to limit the number of tablets that can be
Per
prescribed.
prescription,
From
right.
Instead of 30 to maximum 7.
Right.
If you need more than 7, you go get a refill.
Right.
And you let your doctor decide whether you should have a refill.
Yeah, and similar efforts are underway in Washington, but I think what is important to know, and I've visited with addicts, to better understand, you know, what those dynamics are about. First and foremost, it's an illness. Addiction is an illness. And until we see it as such, we don't approach it with the appropriate mindset. Second of all, physicians are capped at how many patients they can work with, how many they can dispense to. And it was capped at 100 artificially. And it becomes apparent that the doctors that we do have are at their saturation point. And addicts looking to treat their illness with buprenorphine or whatever are impacted because it takes forever to find someone that is available, who's not at her or
They
his
got to go
threshold.
into the street.
So what we did was lift rather, to 250 rather than 100 patients, and then beyond that, added to the community that can address the issue, not just doctors, but physician's assistants and nurse practitioners with the appropriate training and certification. So now you've broadened the audience that can respond to the addict community, and you've raised the cap. So there's a lot more service potential there.
So when you say service potential, are you talking about treatment?
Administering drugs like buprenorphine, which
But-
will combat the heroin addiction.
Oh, that's what it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had met
yeah.
with individuals and presented to them this bipartisan bill that I was sponsoring with a fellow Republican, and explained to them what it meant and or how it was defined, and they were very encouraged that there's more hope out there that will be brought.
Let me
to the
ask you
situation.
something. You also, there's another point which, I mean, maybe it's impossible to deal with, but it's just the policing. I mean, it's coming from somewhere, and I don't know, I mean, maybe it's too huge to, you know, because everybody
Well,
in
there's-
there, you know, I'm just get the FBI on it, or, I mean, you're a congressman.
Well, there's definitely a supply and demand relationship here. But again, some of this was encouraged without knowing what the consequences might be down the road. And as we learned all too painfully, the lessons didn't come quick enough so that a problem did develop. And, you know, as people perhaps would be limited even in their opiate prescription amounts, they then realized they needed that assistance, and then heroin, being as cheap as it is, was made available, and then the reach was to the heroin. And so now we've got a compounded situation. But as I presented to the addicts, it was just days later, in my travel, in fact, to Washington to vote, that I was informed they were gutting the language in the bill that provided the resources. And, you know, you're left with a very empty feeling with a a sense of having provided false hope to individuals. And I had asked, well, why are we cutting and gutting this language? Well, because it's expensive. There's a price tag to it. Well, what do you think happens when you raise a cap from 150 from 100 to 250? What do you think happens when you add to the physician community, physician's assistants and nurse practitioners? So, as it turned out, I had a choice to make. Do I stay with a gutted bill, or do I go with rejecting the very bill that I introduced because of now the denied language? And I chose to stay with it for the only fact that I can be at the negotiating table and try and bring some sense back to the discussion. But when we had the bill on the House floor, after it was gutted, amended, I debated my own bill and said, the language we displaced was now replaced with a situation of phrases that are the sense of Congress. In other words, we're alerting the world to the fact we know it's an epidemic, that it's dangerous, it needs to have more assistance, the addict needs to have more assistance. We put all these virtuous statements together. That is really bad. That's window dressing in its worst format. And so as I combated this on the floor, I said, I read all the sense of Congress. I said, if Congress had sense, they would support this with the resources it requires. This is pain and suffering with individuals who now need this requirement.
So how much was the dollar amount, that the fiscal impact?
I don't remember what it was for the various levels because there were different thresholds.
Are we talking
Well,
billions?
yes.
Yeah, billions of dollars.
Right, but again,
I'm
what is
just asking,
the
'cause that-
price tag
I don't know.
of not doing
We have a
something?
$1 trillion budget, so I mean, there's, you talk about these numbers and it all
Billion
makes
here, billion
sense,
there.
yeah.
Right.
But who carried the bill? I mean, you say it's your bill, but you're in the minority. So
Right,
I
Dr. Bouchon, Congressman Bouchon and myself.
Bouchon
Yeah,
from
He's an MD from, I believe, Kansas, I believe.
Kansas, and he's a Republican?
Yes,
Oh, Kansas, yeah, I guess. They don't
Yeah.
they don't grow Democrats in Kansas, no.
right. But, we worked in earnest, the two of us, to try and make a difference. And we're
And he's a
very,
medical doctor.
yes,
And he's,
very serious
Wow.
about trying to get something done. But again, to just everything you work on.
did you tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, look, I got this bill and I'd like for you to help me with
No,
it?
they know, I've been part of an addiction caucus as a leader there to try and address the illness of addiction. And that's an extension of my work on mental health in general.
That you knew him.
And we got collaborative in our efforts
That's great.
and wanted to get something done. And we're very thrilled about it. And then it was a dejected feeling
All right.
to know that, you're saying you acknowledge there's a problem, you acknowledge you have a solution, you acknowledge a willingness to do something, but now,
And and in the end, you voted for the bill.
no, I voted
Against.
against, but then,
Okay.
I want to be at the table so
Right.
that we can,
You can have your say and try to, get as much as you can. Okay. So let me,
supported the bill in its context.
right.
But made statements on the floor that we need to get the resources here
Right.
for it to be meaningful.
So now, when you go and have a bill like this, do you say, and our New York governor and our New York state legislature led the way where we did this and we did this? and blah,
I'll do
blah,
that
blah?
at times. I'll talk about the New York experience, and so many times New York is ahead of the
Right.
game.
Well,
When I
it
got
seems like
there,
we are now
when-
with this issue.
yes, but when I got to town 4 terms ago, 8 years ago, nearly 8 years ago, it was amazing how many people came to you about issues and what we were going to do, what you were going to do. They were theorizing a vote coming. How are you going to? I said, we've already addressed it in New York. So, sometimes we don't see how visionary, perhaps,
Yeah.
or forward-thinking, or progressive
Right.
we are here in New York. But, these are situations that have a high degree of urgency.
We know that Congress is gridlocked. We know Albany, the Senate and the Assembly, to some extent, is gridlocked. I mean, we've seen fewer two-house bills this year than any other year in the past 20-some-odd years. A lot of one-house bills, a lot of rhetoric, a lot of talk and speechifying, but, the bills that can get to the governor's desk they're few and far between this year. But do you think that you're more gentlemanly in the Congress than they were in the assembly during your time?
It's hard to tell. There's a lot of acrimony at every step of the way. What I have done, Mark, in my situation, I'm on Energy and Commerce.
Yes.
There's probably some 50 of us or so in round numbers. I'm not certain of the,
Yeah,
I'm
that's all right.
don't have it at my fingertips.
We don't need exact.
But a microcosm, a
Yeah.
gross microcosm of the House, of the body.
Uh-huh.
I've made it my goal to reach out to individual Republicans to go to dinner. I just get to know our districts, our needs, our own personal drives, and to find those strands of commonality.
So if I want to go to dinner with you, I got to go get elected to Congress? Is that?
No,
Think about the dinner.
no.
Just joking.
No.
So
We'll let them buy. But anyhow, I do that as an exercise so that, you can't legislate personal behavior.
Yes.
We can try and put some sort of, structured communication together, but it also works best when you get to know folks.
Yes, it does.
And I'm doing my best to do that.
And that's what Ted Kennedy did also.
Really. And I'm finding it fun,
Moynihan.
I'll go to dinner with folks from Texas or from Missouri or from
they say show 'em.
Pennsylvania and Ohio, and you get to know them, their district.
Right.
And is it a guarantee? No, but now that bonding gets all the stronger. And it takes time, it takes effort, and,
And
there's
do-
not much free time available.
And do
but-
they fetch? Like they say, oh, this is my situation, and you think you got it so good on your side, but we don't have it so good on our side. You should only know from this,
Well, they are interesting conversations, I will tell you. There's a little division within tents, so, but I think it's been helpful
Okay.
and certainly not hurtful, and I think definitely helpful. And we've been able to move forward, and I tell them what my priorities are
Yeah, right.
for the committee, and I ask theirs, and it begins the dialogue, and dialogue can solve a lot of things.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask you about this. You were named to the conference committee for the energy bill. Now, for everyone who's probably watching, they have no idea what I just said.
Oh,
So,
sure.
So, because you don't have a conference committee in the assembly. You have a committee, a standing committee, but what's this conference committee thing? And what
yeah,
do you,
on an energy bill, on a comprehensive energy bill, on a like topic, similar topic, the Senate may pass something, United States Senate, and the House of Representatives. And we need to merge those two somehow into a same-as bill. So the process is to develop a
group of
conference
people,
committee.
a group of legislators.
And you pull a small number from the
Senate.
Republican, from the majority and the minority in each house,
Okay.
and they will be the conference team. And I was pleased to be named a conferee. We'll begin work probably this summer, or if not fall at the
Right.
latest. And we'll begin to look at omissions and reforms within the packages that we approved in our respective houses, and then hopefully bring that into a grand compromise and be able to move forward with a bill that then the president hopefully would support. But, we'll have a lot of work to
It
do.
depends on which president. Because
That's
you're
true.
Probably
Well,
not going to finish
it
it
will
by
not,
the end of
it will not be this
2016.
president.
Right.
I think that's
So-
really ambitious thinking.
So let me, well, that's where I am, but I just wanted to find out about how big is this conference committee? How many people
I
from the
was-
Senate, how many people from the House?
I would say there's probably about 24, 44 people maybe
Wow.
for the two houses.
And how many of your conference in the House, the Democratic conference?
The
in the House?
Democratic conference are
of the
on?
House, yeah.
Maybe a dozen,
You were chosen out of a
10,
dozen out of-
12,
Yeah, and how many Democrats are there in the House?
180, I believe.
In around 180?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So this is going to be comprehensive, meaning that you're looking at all kinds of wind and solar and...
looking at that, and one of
Every
the
kind of-
really shortcomings in our House bill, which I regret, is no focus on the grid. Just like if you're going to reach to renewables, Rabbi,
Right, good.
you need interconnection to be as strong and updated as possible, because otherwise you won't be able to utilize that free, no fuel cost outcome in effective manners.
Well, not yet. I mean, you're there at the table.
Right.
I mean, you're
So-
going to bring this to
But right,
to
but
their
the
attention.
glaring omission, I'm saying,
Right
in
now,
our House
as of
version
now.
is no grid
Right.
response, and we need that. We need research into efficiency.
Right.
There's a number of things that need to be done. Standalone
That you're
generation.
going to bring some sense to this.
Great,
And
and
this
I
will
look
be-
forward to it. You know, there's
you
a
know.
great passion that builds with all of this. You know, it's like, one thing I find in this kind of sluggish atmosphere in Washington is to be all the more aggressive, because I think you just need to be passionate in that response to keep building the movement to go forward, which is what the sit-in was all about.
Okay, so let me ask you this. We have learned a lot about our the private lives of our legislators, whether it's through reading indictments and, you know, whatever, however the curtain opens, okay? How much of a private life do you think an elected official should have to reveal?
Well, I think
not
there has
as-
to be a balance, because you'll never have people running for office. We have to be realistic about that. And it's all, you know, in accordance with an ethical behavior. You know, if...
But I'm talking about, you know, at the bottom of everyone's bio, they say, I'm married, my wife, so-and-so, and my kids, and my grandkids, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, they put some personal information out there.
Yeah.
But how much into the private life of
You know, I think that
a person
that
should...
cuts it well. I think that, you know, the breakdown, the failure that's been part of some of the last couple of years is all about bad judgment, unethical behavior.
Okay, aside from the criminal side.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the
No, I
average,
think-
everyday
yeah,
elected official. Should they be an open book personally? Should they, you know,
Yeah,
on
I
the,
think-
in the county legislature, they put their home address. And when you get to the state level, they don't put their home address. When you get to the Congress, they tell you, don't even put congressional plates
Yeah.
on your car.
Yeah.
So-
you know, I think we have to be, I think what we've done in the past was fine. And, you know, to go beyond some of that, you know, again, where there should be a right to privacy, so that addresses and stuff don't
Right.
have to be shared to that nth degree.
Well,
You
and
know,
they
we have
can-
offices where people are approachable, and
And I think they could get it off your election, your petitions.
yeah, there's
Your-
no,
on your
with
petitions they have,
technology,
right?
it's very difficult to,
But
Hide
yeah,
yourself.
because you put your home. But is there anything that the public doesn't know about you, and after
No.
30 years of
No,
being in
or
office,
40-some.
40-something
41.
years, that you would like
No.
to tell them that you don't know?
No, I mean, people know you, they know you as their representative, as a friend, as their neighbor. We've worked on several situations together. And, you know, it's just a good feeling to know that there's a trust and an order of responsibility that's been exchanged.
You know, just in the last minute, though, of course, what's dear to our hearts is the state of Israel, and even in New York, in the assembly, that they had connection to Israel, but surely as a congressman, maybe you're not on the armed services, but, you know, we're always concerned about the peace and the security of the state of Israel.
And the foreign aid that's been part of it, been working closely with them. And certainly Israel is a leader in clean energy and innovation and efficiency. And so we can take many lessons from our ally Israel in terms of how they've had to respond, perhaps with a greater sense of urgency than even us, with our concerns about climate change and about
Water supply.
and the threats to fossil-based fuels that have been our reliance. And we know that we can do things in an improved format, in a way that enables us to maintain the reliability and capacity issues for our generated supply.
Excellent.
And is there a House Jewish caucus or something, or?
No, I stay close to
Well,
organizations that...
No, but there's, like, we have the Jewish Legislators Association, Assemblyman Chuck Levine is the head of that, but is there a Jewish caucus of some sort in the House?
No, a lot of that is addressed through, like, either the Progressive Caucus or through various clusters that people form. They get together with friends, have discussions, you know, a lot of opportunity to think tank
Yeah.
with your colleagues.
But I thought there was a Jewish House caucus. I wasn't,
don't
they may
think so. I
not be,
never heard of it.
and I just might have been dreaming it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't look it up ahead of time, let's put it that way.
Oh, there you
It
go.
wasn't something I was.
Well, I can
Intuitive
tell you there are a
research.
number of forces that equate you to the, you know, to the issues and the proposed solutions
So
and what works
you
well.
wrote something very quickly on your, about the Arctic and how green it is and not icy anymore.
Right, the climate change.
And then you're looking at the rainforest and how that's changed also. So everything is,
And even between those
Yeah, right.
situations, I mean, what we've seen in West Virginia with heavy torrential
Flooding,
rains
yeah.
and flooding that I think was the 12th worst in our nation's history. When you look at the droughts in the Southwest.
right. Well, we had
and the-
Hurricane Sandy and
fires.
Irene and Lee and.
Yeah, and you know, we've seen these expressions out there by Mother Nature that ought to
But
alert us.
I really want to talk about, because they were dramatic photos that you had on your Facebook page about how green the Arctic is.
And I think those are the telltale factors that remind us that climate change as a concept is real and that we need to respond to it. And if we think that, you know, the whole carbon emission issue is something we can just take lightly, buyer beware, because the methane situation that would follow would be even more complex.
You know, we're out of time, but it was so good to have an annual
you.
report from our local
Thank you,
congressman. And we wish you great success. You're doing great
Thank
work
you.
for the people.
Thank you,
And
Rabbi.
do it with good health.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you, always a pleasure.